can't have missed this in the news. It's had huge publicity, and perhaps the chance of finding new witnesses tonight might be slim.
But even if it's a long shot, someone out there must know something. Danielle vanished on a walk to school 4 weeks ago in the village of East Tilbury.
Okay, morning everybody. Welcome to day 28. Exactly 4 weeks today since Danielle went missing. Tasking today for teams 2 and 3 will be a footpath that runs from Butts Lane to a railway bridge at Linford in Essex. Okay, the divers will be continuing today at the lake nearest to the East Tilbury village. There's tyre tracks footmarks on one area of that lake where they'll be paying particular attention.
Because you're just sitting waiting for news all the time, which is hard, very hard. But basically at the end of each day, there is no news, there is no result. There is nothing to tell us, really. The only one thing we want to know is something that we're not hearing, and that's that they found her. She's not a withdrawn child, but she is very shy. She's just a homely girl. She's not one that likes to be wandering about at all. She loves animals. She adores her rabbits. She's got 2 very young rabbits, which she's not had long. She got up her normal rushing around. Her friends knocked as usual and she wasn't ready. She normally has like 2 sandwiches and then just stuffs it all in the school bag, and she went out at about 5 to 8. The normal thing was to say, see you later, Mum, and I'd say, see you later. I wished I'd told her how much I loved her. Just hope I get another chance.
Danielle's brother saw her turn left as usual, but then she turned and walked the other way. Why? 2 schoolboys saw her as well, and assumed she was heading for a nearby shop, though she could have caught the school bus going that way too. She never did. Perhaps quite unconnected, but someone thinks they saw a schoolgirl arguing with a man not far away. Later that day, Danielle's school rang her home to say she hadn't turned up.
So I just thought, she'll come home. Any minute now she'll turn up. And I was sure by dark she would come home because she doesn't like the dark. There is no way she wouldn't make contact with me. I know there isn't. Just from the simple note she leaves me, she's going to a friend. I'll phone you when I get there. I'm next door. A month sounds an awfully long time. Each day makes it the less likely good outcome in my mind. Although I've still got that slight flicker that there'll be a good outcome, but that is getting very hard to believe anymore, really.
Well, Peter, that's Mum's hope. What about you?
Well, I'm convinced that Danielle has been abducted. I know that she was last seen walking towards Coronation Avenue, but after that I don't know where she went to, and we really need to speak to anybody who saw her after she left the road close to where she lives. Anyone who may have been there, they may think that we already have the information and we don't need to speak to them again. We do. Anybody who can tell us anything about Danielle's movements after she left home should contact us urgently.
And what about the possible sighting of Danielle arguing with a man? You know about that, but you want more witnesses on that, if possible.
I want witnesses to anything that happened to Danielle. It's possible that it was her involved in that argument. It may have been somebody else, and if it was, let's speak to them. Let's rule them out so we can be clear what we're now looking for. But if that was Danielle and anybody else saw an argument or a conversation between 2 people, speak to us. Tell us what you saw. No matter how insignificant it is, it can contribute to our investigation. It may be the absolute key to what we're looking for.
Given that you believe she was abducted, is there anything that may have been going on in her life before this that might shed any light?
I certainly think it's a possibility. There may be friends who have been confided in. There may be somebody who knows something that she's talked about at school or in the village. Contact us and tell us that. There may be good reasons why you haven't spoken to us before. They may be frightened with this length of time having passed that they'll be criticised if they come forward now. We must speak to them. Tell us now whatever you can to help, and let us be the judge of how useful it is.
So anything or anyone possibly that was bothering Danielle?
Indeed, anything or anyone. We would like to speak to them now.
The information you think you'll find that will unlock this for you is going to be in the local area in East Tilbury. Shall we just remind ourselves, you're looking for items like this, aren't you? This is what, Danielle's school bag?
Yes. When Danielle left home, she left home in a school uniform with her school bag and books inside it. Her lunch was inside the bag.
Okay.
And anybody walking around the Tilbury or the Thurrock area of Essex who should see anything similar to this, a Kukai bag.
Kukai bag. This is her school tie.
That's the school tie. Yeah, that's St Clair's school tie. Now that is the comprehensive school for that area. But we're looking for any indication of where Danielle has been or may be now.
And her school blazer.
Indeed.
Okay, all right. Peter, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, Dan here. Tony, do you agree with Linda, your wife, and do you agree with Peter about what's happened?
Yes, I do. I've always got that glimmer of hope that she is still alive, but we just know that she wouldn't have run away. We know that 100%. The type of girl she was, she just wouldn't have run away.
Do you, Linda, believe at this stage there is anybody out there who knows something who hasn't come forward? In your heart, is that what you suspect is going on?
I hope so, because we've just had nothing positive, so someone surely has got to know something. She hasn't just disappeared off the face of the earth. Someone's got to have seen something.
It could also perhaps be a girlfriend of Danielle, somebody she's confided in who knows something, who again is fearful. Maybe she feels she should have come forward before. Maybe she feels it was told in confidence. There are all sorts of reasons. What do you say to tempt that girl to come forward and talk?
Well, obviously someone knows something. If it is a friend, I know they must be really frightened of leaving it this long to come forward, but they've got to come forward to put us out of this. We can't deal with this indefinitely.
You know, from the enormous reaction there's been, it's somehow a crime that really has touched the nation's heart.
That's
Everybody
right,
out there is hoping for you tonight. And let's hope that the right person or people call in. Please ring us here in the studio, 0500 600 600, or the Incident Room. You can call it directly. It's manned now and will be for a long time tonight, 01 245 464222.
A post-mortem examination has established that a body found at a cement works in Kent is not that of the missing girl, Danielle Jones. Danielle, who was 15, disappeared near the works last summer. Police have launched a murder inquiry to establish the identity of the remains.
I don't think it's ever going to get any better. It's my biggest change, the thought of it. I don't know where she is still. Don't know where she is.
Sir, can you start moving across that way? Anyone else? Keep moving across.
I still look out the car window when we drive along. We went out yesterday, and all the time you're looking across the fields thinking, could be there. I just don't know if we'll ever know. That's unbearable to me.
On a Monday morning in June 2001, Danielle Jones left home to catch the bus to school. On the 19th of December last year, Stuart Campbell, Danielle's uncle, was convicted of her kidnap and murder. Her body has still not been found.
Jane's going to take you swimming tonight. Where's that programme thing that had the...
I've got that. So
For 18 months, Linda and Tony Jones and their sons, Mitchell and Ryan, have tried to come to terms with Danielle's disappearance. This film follows them over the last year as they await the trial and any news of the search to find Danielle.
yeah, but I mean, I can pick him up. We're saying about going by train one way, and I can pick him up.
Linda began a personal video diary to record the thoughts and feelings that she was finding it increasingly difficult to talk about.
62 weeks today since I last saw Danielle. It's just the marking of another week. She's not here. 62 weeks is a year and 10 weeks. And all those times I'm going to have to go through, and it's going to be 10 years and 10 weeks, and 15 years and 10 weeks. I've got to try and get them to lead a normal life in that time. How do you do it? How do you get them to lead a normal life?
The first Linda and Tony knew of a problem was when Danielle's school phoned to ask why she was absent.
I thought even if she'd bunked school for the day, she would, once it got dark, she would be home. I was pretty certain of that. She was frightened of the dark. Once she didn't come home and it got dark, that's when I really got concerned.
I didn't want to leave the house in case she turned up or she contacted me. Sat up most of the night, wouldn't lock the front door because I thought she might just turn up. I hadn't thought at that point that something might have happened to her, really, I don't think, at that point.
Well, all I say to Danielle, if you're hearing, just come home. That's all I want to say.
For God's sake, come forward. I'm so desperate to get her back.
She was wearing her school uniform and was due to catch the bus from Queen Mary Avenue in East Tilbury at 8:10 a.m.
The vast majority of children who go missing with friends or with the knowledge of their friends. And instead of sheepishness and evasiveness on the part of friends, they were actively seeking Linda and Tony and seeking us to say, look, we're worried, where is she?
On the Monday, it was just the specific questions that were asked, like, is she close to any family members, or anything like that, and it just sort of just sprung to mind, like, she is close to family members, and it happens to be him.
Campbell married into the family and grew close to Danielle. He appeared to be the only person to have received a text message from her on the day she disappeared. But background checks revealed a string of convictions, including one for child abduction that Campbell had managed to keep secret since 1989.
We knew something had happened, but it was at a time where we weren't really involved, and if we spoke to Tone's mum and dad about it, it was all very much brushed. Oh no, it's nothing, it's all a big mistake. And we never really knew that much about it, and I suppose the reaction from Tone's mum and dad was, oh, it's nothing to worry, it's all a storm in a teacup, it's all been blown out of proportion, and we were led to believe that he was acquitted.
Campbell had abducted a 14-year-old schoolgirl in East Tilbury, taken her to his house and photographed her. He pleaded guilty, but having served a year on remand, was freed at the end of the trial.
All of the facts that we knew, all of the intelligence that we were developing and trying to turn into facts about the circumstances, what that left me with was a question, should I arrest him or should I not arrest him?
We're here in the search for Danielle Jones.
I came down on the side of arresting him to put one question to him, where's Danielle?
Can you say your name, please?
Stuart Campbell.
With reasonable grounds to believe, Stuart, you know where she is, don't you?
No.
Where is she?
The lady said to me not to say nothing, right?
Right. Can your conscience allow you to do that? You know where she is.
Try and keep the line in the middle.
What's her name?
Danielle.
Danielle.
Right, move gradually to your left as it's opening up.
You're not going to talk to her, Stuart?
Nothing to say.
In the context of our investigation, we couldn't hold him any longer. Releasing him was always a worry. I believed he was a very, very dangerous offender.
When they'd bailed him, I thought, well, they're making inquiries, he's got to be involved, for sure. And I just thought we'd go to wherever she was and release her, really. But that never happened.
At his house, police found indecent photographs that Campbell had taken of young girls. pornographic images of children he had downloaded from the internet, and a bag hidden in the loft.
It's been described by someone as his goodie bag that he keeps in the loft, and when he gets a young victim round there, he goes up in the loft, brings the bag down, and he encourages the victim either to take photographs of them or some other form of abuse. We've got photographs of young girls that Campbell has taken pictures of in underwear that frankly a 15-year-old girl should not be wearing.
The whole way he lived that was unravelling, that the police were telling us about. I mean, I don't know, I just think you feel sick that someone you thought you knew fairly well, you obviously didn't know at all.
We quickly uncovered a number of offences that he'd committed regarding either downloading child pornography from the internet to actually incidents with other young girls many, many years ago. These other offences were all we had evidence for to charge him, so he was charged and he was remanded in custody.
Mitch? You know my baggies?
Boys, you up? Come on then.
No?
Yeah.
Just watch the music.
Okay. And we've asked them how they feel about what's happened to Danielle, and they are both devastated by it. It's something, you know, they've got to live with as well, but Mitchell's way is just, okay, I know what's happened, but I'm just getting on with things. Ryan's reacted differently as time's gone on, really. He's very angry. I feel as though he's a time bomb waiting to go off. There's not a lot I can do to stop that happening. Just keep an eye out and deal with it when it does. We had to tell Mitchell on Tuesday that he was going to have to be a witness, which he wasn't very impressed with. So we took them up to the court. That was one of the reasons we were taking them, and also so that they knew they had to see what it was like, and for Ryan to see what was going to be happening and things. Ryan actually went into a courtroom with us, and he did get upset a little bit. I think the experience of it was the fact that when I spoke to them both last night, they've tried to sort of not have to think about what's happened and what's going to happen. That they know what's happened and they know there's going to be a court case, but I think they've just chosen to put it to the back of their minds and not have to deal with it. But of course, they have got to deal with it. Hello. You got your dinner money?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You got keys?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Okay. All right then. Good day.
Yeah.
See you later.
Tony runs his own dry cleaning business. He continues to work, but Linda has given up her job. The impending trial of a family member is causing tension between them.
It's just the biggest complication you could ever have. I have had resentment towards Tone because of that link. It's caused me to almost resent. I mean, I know it's not his fault, but it's caused me some resentment because it's like, you know, your family's caused this, which is just added resentment for me. But he knows deep down I didn't mean it, and I've said things that I thought, perhaps I shouldn't have said that, but he knows because of the situation that I'm just venting my anger, and he's been big enough to sort of accept it that way, I suppose, but it's caused a lot of resentment, yeah.
Bill Curry, this specialist dry clean, this suede and leather clean. All right, but I mean, yeah, you're looking about a week, All right, thanks a lot. See you. Bye.
The charges against Campbell are also having effects on the wider family.
There's been a fallout with Mum and Dad, with my sister, with me nan, and we'll never ever get back together again. It's gone too far now to get back together. I do get upset here at the shop or when I'm coming to work, and I think Lynn does when I'm at work, but we try not to. I get really angry when I see Lynn so upset. and I think she's the same with me, so we try not to get upset in front of each other, really.
I was irritable with Tone, so we ended up not speaking because we had a few heated words, because I was showing my true emotions on how I felt about it, and I don't think he likes to hear that, really. So I had an early night to avoid any more confrontation, but that'll happen. I'm sure it'll happen many more times. Everyday life still affects me very hard, and it is down to the washing and the ironing. Even now, I'm so aware I've got nothing of hers to hang on the line. I've got nothing of hers in the ironing pile, and it sounds trivial things, but they still affect me so much on a daily basis. And there's very few days that go past that there isn't some mundane part of everyday life that doesn't affect me to the point that it's something she's not doing or something I'm not doing for her. Even if it is just to say to her, can you tidy your room? I haven't got that to say anymore. And obviously this is going to be an ongoing thing. But it is an everyday event. Some days I deal with it and some days I don't. It's just eating away at me all the time. I just hope the person responsible for this pays. There'll never be an answer to it. But there's got to be some price for someone to pay for this. I'm just dreading the day I see him in there.
As the trial approaches, Linda, Tony and the boys face further torment. The court will hear Campbell's claims that prior to Danielle's disappearance, family relationships were at breaking point.
You don't understand the actual structure of the family in this house.
Explain it
With
to
no
me.
disrespect to Tone and Lynn, they sort of at their wits' end with Danielle. So much so that she can't stand being in the same room as her dad. It's just easier to try and be a middle broker between them. So you can try and get mum and dad to talk to Danielle, Danielle to give a bit there, them to give a little bit there, just to keep peace, and then the boys aren't all upset all the time.
It's been portrayed that Danielle didn't get on with Tone very well, and she always used to get on with him very well, but I did see a change in her attitude towards Tone, which I put down to her getting older. I put down to just the normal father-teenage girl relationship, but I've since learnt that that is one of his repeated actions to put a wedge between the daughters and their dads.
When he met with Danielle, he used to say to her, I wouldn't put up with this, what you're putting up with from your mum and dad. And then when he saw us, he used to say, well, I've had a chat with her and I think she's going to be better towards you. So that was the type of thing that he was doing. He was making out that he was helping both parties, but really he was sort of drawing us apart, really.
She was growing up awkwardly like children do,
And at that time, he was a man who said, hey, you're great, you're really nice, you're wonderful, you're a charming woman. And she was taken in by that, just like so many other young girls would be and have been.
Danielle has now been missing for more than a year. With 3 months till the trial, police step up the search for her body.
Stuart Campbell's home address is here, and then, let's say, Danielle's home address is just here, all the way around here. It's totally open fields, woodland, and the decision was made earlier on that all this land would be searched, the whole lot. So this is quite a good one, isn't it? I mean, because you can pull off the road, and then you've got areas either side of that, and then further up.
And overlooked again, there's a few windows through the tree, but the trees may well have been overgrown at the time. So if we just pop out, we'll go and have a quick look.
For a murder trial, evidence that there is a body is obviously vital evidence, and for that reason we wanted to keep searching right up until the trial. Notwithstanding, we also wanted to keep searching so we'd find Danielle for Tony and Linda.
We have conversations indoors. Yeah. Oh, have you heard where they're searching this week? And I'll just say, well, not specifically. I think you're very anxious that the day will come where they won't search. I think you're a lot more anxious about that, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't think I'll be upset except the day that they give up searching.
Our search has never been speculative, it's been based on intelligence, and that will continue, but the fact of life is that intelligence will now come through in dribs and drabs as opposed to lots and lots of intelligence, so that won't necessitate searching every single day. It'll go on until the trial, and then after the trial, if there is intelligence, we'll do it as and when.
Is that still coming in even up to now, or is there still intelligence that's coming?
There's not any new intelligence coming in.
I need to know where she is. At the moment, we don't know where she is.
She's found, we can have a funeral, it's somewhere we can go. But as it is now, it's just left that she's dumped, and that's hard to accept.
Very hard. It's now 63 weeks since I last saw her, and 2nd of September means it's now exactly 1 month till the trial. That is really frightening, really frightening. One month.
The trial is scheduled to last for 8 weeks at Chelmsford Crown Court. The prosecution case is that, unbeknown to Tony and Linda, Stuart Campbell had been grooming Danielle for some time.
Oh, it's finished. That is a horrible feeling, knowing now what we know, and knowing that with all these years we've let this person be a trusted member of our family and come in our house and do different things with Danielle. I mean, he did take her shopping, which sounds perhaps strange in itself, but at the time, the way it was said about her, oh, I want to go and buy a few bits for the baby, or Danielle, do you want to come and help me pick? At the time, that seemed a perfectly logical reason to let her go.
Danielle had spoken with her friends about her shopping trip with Campbell. He had also taken her to the cinema, and she confided in Nicola that he had held her hand.
Hello, fruity jelly lip gloss. Ooh, nice. It's just kind of like in passing conversation. Oh, what did you do on your day off? Blah, 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 I did this. What did you do? Oh, I went to the pictures, yeah. I was like, oh, right, any good? And she just said it, and I was like, oh, okay. I think that's when I started to think,
everything's not too good.
I said to Nicola, that is not right for an uncle to be doing that. Not only taking your niece shopping, fine, but then taking your niece to the pictures and holding her hand. In my world, that is not a done thing, and I made that clear to Nicola.
Don't question the fact.
No,
do
it's
you?
their uncle, and although they're not blood, it's their uncle.
You wouldn't question your own uncle, would you?
No, I wouldn't question my own uncle, so...
You can't really question anybody else's, could you?
I don't think at that stage it was for me to take the matter up with Lynn and Tony, because I didn't want to upset Lynn and Tony's relationship with Tony's family. It could have been construed as me interfering, and I didn't think at that point in time that was the right thing to do.
I don't know how I'm going to be when I face him in court. That makes me feel just sick, the thought of him sitting there, and just makes me feel sick. What he's put us through, what he's put the boys through. I just want to walk over and rip his heart out. It's just undescribable how we feel and how I feel, and
the detective leading the hunt for the missing schoolgirl Millie Dowler has been to woods in Hampshire where human remains have been found.
12 days before the trial, and a body has been found in Hampshire. Family liaison officer Ed Mayo knows that Linda and Tony have heard the news.
I was going to see Linda today anyway, because I've got a statement I need to take just to clarify some points. Obviously, as the trial gets closer and closer and closer, there's lots that has been asked of Linda and Tony, but the points I've asked, I just need to get them into a statement form. And then this morning, obviously, there's this body that's been found down in Hampshire.
It could be Danielle, but where it is, I suppose, tells me it wouldn't be. But there is that little hope that it could be.
Alan Betts from Hampshire Police, who's leading the inquiry, says they still don't know whether it's Millie Dowler.
Linda accepts, and Tony accept that Danielle is dead, and to actually have Danielle back would be a relief. So when this sort of thing does sort of happen, they do really, in a strange way, want it to be Danielle. I mean, it's something they want to do. They want to bury Danielle. They want to have the choice of where their daughter goes, basically.
If it isn't who they think it is it a possibility? But I think we both...
Obviously the indications are looking like that it is Millie. It's wrong that you should hope that it is your dead son or daughter.
Yeah, it is hard to understand, but I am in some ways envious. I was envious when Holly and Jessica were found, because that's the one thing we really know.
If you remember Diane Lamplin, I think she said she was envious of you because you opened your day at court.
Yeah.
Because she's not got Susie back and no court case, where at least she said you opened a court case.
And I think if you were to give me the option of having my day in court or her back, I'd have her back.
Yeah.
If it was one or the other, I'd choose to have her back.
In the last hour, Hampshire Police have confirmed that the body found in woodlands near Fleet is the missing schoolgirl Millie Dowler. Forensic teams have been examining the remains all day and tests have been carried out this afternoon. The police made this statement.
Our worst fears have been confirmed, and I can now tell you that the search for Millie has changed from a missing person inquiry into a murder investigation.
It just breaks my heart to think about where she is. Because I think on the news over the weekend, yesterday or whatever day it was, they were saying about Millie Dowler's body. fact that it's been 6 months since she went missing and the body's been found, and how decomposed it was after 6 months. I think they said the elements had taken their toll. And I think what disturbed me most, they said that wildlife had obviously had an effect on the condition of her body. And it just makes me... What condition's my little girl in? We've got a pre-trial press briefing, which I am anxious about, because the media are going to be there, and I think there's going to be some time for them to take photographs or whatever it is they need to do. And I do find dealing with the media quite distressing. Just sitting there, having them all sitting looking at you, I'm not comfortable with at all. And then when all the cameras start flashing, I don't like that one little bit.
Turn your cross your legs the other way, just so that you're... That's it.
Every time they meet the media, it's difficult. They'll never get used to that. I think they're becoming hardened to it now. Every time another event like that takes place, it reminds them of how significant events in their life have become.
Linda, if I could start with you, tell me about the last time you saw Danielle.
Well, it was the morning that she left for school. Just a very normal morning. Got up, got dressed, said goodbye, see you later, and that, it was just so normal.
So, without further ado, I'll pass you over to Steve Reynolds.
Good morning. I am determined to find Danielle's body. The searches will stop at the end of this month. They will, however, be resumed whenever we received any intelligence that justifies a further search. Now, the date for the searches ceasing actually coincides with the start of the trial. And whilst it was always my intention to continue searching up to the start of the trial, actually we have now come to the end of the intelligence packages which have been repaired, looking at likely deposition sites. But I do stress, and I've reassured Tony and Linda of this, that whenever we get any intelligence which may identify another possible site, we will resume our search.
And talked about previous cases where murders have been successfully prosecuted without a body, but clearly that set a tremendous threshold for us to overcome even before we considered evidence against Mr. Campbell. What we were able to say was that our evidence was all circumstantial. Having said that, it was compelling. After Danielle went missing, given all the contact, all the attempts to phone her, to text her by her friends, by her family, there was only one person in the world that Danielle tried to contact, and that was Campbell. And she's allegedly texted him on the Monday, and then allegedly texted him on the Tuesday. Now, I don't believe she did text him. What I believe is that Campbell had those two phones, his own and her phone, in his possession, and that he used her phone to text him with a very spurious message that was intended to indicate that she was safe and well. I think as the evidence of those text messages come out in court, they will be one of the most compelling parts that shows that Campbell was responsible for her abduction.
Thank God that's over, because I was a little bit anxious about it. I suppose our next big day now is next Wednesday, when the trial begins. I do find it quite good talking to myself, because whereas I'm normally sitting here with this all going over in my mind about what's happened through the day or whatever, I do find it quite a relief to be able to speak out loud, knowing there's a purpose because this is being recorded, but without sitting here feeling, my God, I'm going mad, I'm talking to myself. It's sort of like a self-counselling session, I suppose, but I do find it useful, and just to unburden my thoughts, really.
You know the person that's done it, so I don't really know how I'm going to be at the time when the court case, when it actually comes up. I know I've got to stay composed at the time, but it's going to be very hard to do that.
In the weeks before Danielle's disappearance, Linda and Tony began to get annoyed by Campbell's constant intrusions.
Well, the amount of times he was coming round, I mean, it was like four times a week, 5 times a week, and I thought this is not a normal relationship.
It got to a point where it was becoming so regular, I was getting fed up with it.
And I thought, well, rather than cause a big row in the family, I'll try and get Danielle to say to him, you know, not to come round so much.
I just sort of said to her, oh, Danielle, it's not. Why does he keep meeting you from the bus? Why can't he accept you want to be with your own friends?
He was there and he was standing outside his van, and he was just standing there making sure that everybody knew he was there, and he was there for her, and she was embarrassed by it. It was like 4 double-decker buses stop there, all the kids pile off, and he's standing there, and it's for her, and she was quite embarrassed. She doesn't want attention drawn to her, does she?
He was sitting on the settee, on the arm of the settee. Danielle was sitting next to him, and he kept saying, why are you so embarrassed, Danielle? Why are you going so red? And then I said to him, what was the problem? And he just brushed it off, and I said, what's the problem between you and Danielle? And all he said was, there's no problem.
I had a dilemma. Well, they could confront Campbell over what seemed to be quite innocuous, isolated acts. His reaction was undoubtedly going to be horror and anger. How can you possibly suggest this to me? I'm trying to support and love and care for your daughter, doing everything an uncle could ever be expected to do, and you throw it back in my face with allegations like this? That would destroy a family, just the conversation. And what if they were wrong? What if there was nothing at all other than a loving uncle supporting a niece?
Police believe that just before Danielle went missing, Campbell was becoming increasingly dangerous. While the family was away on holiday, he had been into her bedroom and left 2 notes. Danielle never mentioned this to her mother, but again confided in Nicola.
Having a note found in her bedroom, and for her not to be there when it was put there,
it was out of control of her, wasn't it?
It was out of her control. It means he's been there while she's away, and that's a line that person shouldn't cross. Whether they're your best friend or whoever, they shouldn't do that. And she knew that, and she didn't like that. And I don't think I would either, and I didn't like that. I felt concerned for her. It was like, how did he get in? You know, he must. You know, it's tiny questions that go through your head, and they all build up to one big answer.
He kept a diary, what we've called the Danielle diary, where really any contact with her, even any sort of telephone call or text message, he's actually recorded in his diary. So what started off as very little interest in his niece ended up with a complete obsession.
It has been 67 weeks today since I saw Danielle, and it is now less than 36 hours till the trial starts, and I've sort of been to bed for a couple of hours, and I've taken the normal tablets, but I'm struggling tonight to be able to switch off, really. think it's all just getting a bit too much.
Right, good morning. Again, back to Operation Spinning Clouds. Been out for the last final days now. What I'd like to do is obviously thank everyone for their time over the last 15 months. I know it has been hard work, but also just to make sure that people are still switched on and concentrating. Is there any questions at all? Right, okay then let's go. Thank you.
Cheers. Let's go.
I think the worst part is that we've not found Danielle. It would have been nice if we had found her, so it's something for the parents. I think that's something that the whole team feels, really.
It's just a question of where the SIO draws the line, really. And you can only give him advice, and he makes his decisions based on those. But you could search the rest of the world, so you have got to stop somewhere.
Okay.
I know the searching has stopped, and they've searched solidly for 16 months, and that was quite hard to swallow. The torment of it all is never going to go away, never going to go away. But I just hope and pray that at some point she is found. I think I'm in a little bit of disbelief that today's the day, actually. I do feel a bit het up, a bit, I don't know, I feel strange today. I am very, very nervous. Feel a little bit sicky, to be honest, but I think that is nerves and everything. But I just wanted a quick word with Miss Mum to say that today is the day, and let's hope we get through it okay. I'll speak to you later.
Tony and Linda's 16-month wait is over. Their brother-in-law, Stuart Campbell, is standing trial for the kidnap and murder of their daughter. It will be the first time that they have come face to face with him since Danielle's disappearance.
This is the person that's done this to our daughter. I was absolutely livid the first time I went in the court. I did manage to calm myself down after I've been sitting in there about 2 minutes. I had to go there and see him for the first time, just to get that over with. To get the anger, I think, out of me.
I just want to get in there and stand up in there and say, that bastard sitting over there is responsible for this. You know it, we know it. Why are we going through this pantomime? That's what I want to go in there and say. Even if he gets found guilty, in a way that's only the start. That's the start of him hopefully telling us where she is. Well, if anyone ever has the speck of doubt that someone in their family is doing something that they're not happy with, then the worst that can happen is you can have an argument about it. If it's nothing, then it's nothing, you'll get over it. But if it turns out to be something, God's sake, don't ever let yourself be sitting here where I am. You get over an argument, you can't get over this. Because if it can happen in our family, who I would have said was a perfectly normal, functioning family, minor disputes within the household, and I can't think of a household that wouldn't have minor disputes. And believe me, it can happen to anyone.
On Thursday, the 19th of December, after an 11-week trial, Stuart Campbell was found guilty of kidnapping and murdering Danielle. Police planned to speak to him on Christmas Eve, but he refused to meet detectives and so far has not revealed where Danielle's body is hidden.
If you've been affected by the issues on tonight's programme and would like details of organisations that can offer information and support, then call the BBC Action Line on 0800 888809. Lines are open until midnight every day. All calls are free and confidential.
Every 90 seconds, someone is reported missing. Many return to their families, but for others, something has gone seriously wrong. A 15-year-old girl has gone missing.
I just couldn't believe that she hadn't been to school.
By the time Linda Jones dialed 999, she'd been missing all day.
It's immediately a high-risk case.
We were approaching summer holidays and the community were very concerned about a potential predator at loose.
What happens in the police investigation that follows?
We identified some 30 victims over a 20-year period.
What happens to the family at its heart?
Well, you like to think you'd protect your children, and obviously I feel that I let her down. I didn't protect her.
When missing turns to murder.
Danielle was a very shy girl, lacked self-confidence, but she had quite a big group of friends. She was a very fun-loving girl. She had a good sense of humour. Just a really happy, fun-loving teenage girl, really. If Danielle ever went out to meet friends or shopping, there would never be a time where I didn't know where she was. She was always, would tell me where she was going. She had her breakfast as normal. She was always the one to be running late. Always. She left at 10 to 8 most mornings. She went out the door as normal, said goodbye to me as normal.
Danielle's brother Mitchell is watching from the window.
That morning, he watched her go out of the gate and turn left, which was her normal route to school, and within seconds watched her turn around and walk back past the house the other way, which was very unusual, but at the time he didn't say to me because it's just perhaps she was going round to the shop. So at that particular time, he didn't mention it because it wasn't of any relevance that morning. Heard absolutely nothing till, I think it was probably about 2:30. I had a phone call from the school to say, was Danielle unwell? She hadn't been at school, which horrified me because that wasn't something she'd do. She was a bit of a scaredy cat. Not that she would have been punished for it, but she just wouldn't have ever dared do something like that. It got to 3:30 and I started to phone her school friends. They didn't seem to, any of them, have heard from her or anything, which was very strange. The whole thing was just not her character to do this, and I think I then began to panic a little bit. I phoned the police and just explained that she'd gone out to school that morning as normal.
Good evening, Mrs. Specific Force. Can I help you?
Yes, I wonder if you can. It's regarding my daughter.
Yeah. How old's your daughter, love?
15.
15. And how long's she been missing, love?
Since 8 o'clock this morning.
Any missing child, there is always the potential that something dreadful may have happened to them. And that is why missing children are given such a high priority. So in this case, Danielle had never been missing before, and by the time Linda Jones dialed 999, she'd been missing all day and into some of the evening. So Linda's distress was totally understandable.
It was initially dealt with by the local divisional police as a high-risk missing person. She was a girl that wasn't worldly wise, she was afraid of the dark, and there'd been no instance of her truanting at all from school before.
Missing people generally go missing for a variety of reasons. Maybe some sort of cry for help. It may be, particularly with children, that they've fallen out with their parents and they see this as causing stress on their parents and solving whatever problems they've got.
I just couldn't believe that she hadn't been to school. I just don't think I could comprehend that she'd not done what she would normally do. I don't think I believed that she would have bunked off school. I don't think I really knew what to think, to be quite honest with you. I thought, but by say 6 o'clock, she'll turn up and say, oh, with the story, oh, I didn't go to school. I thought she'd just walk in with the story at any point, but I think I was just in total disbelief of what had gone on in that day. I stayed here with a close friend in case she did come home, and just friends and family were just trawling around the estate, going to the train station, waiting there to see if she got off a train. Everyone was just out looking around the local area for hours and hours.
The first 24 hours are very critical. Obviously the whereabouts, last sightings, had she taken a mobile phone, had she taken a change of clothing, had she taken cash, there was only potential for her to catch public transport, really just trying to trace down her movements.
Danielle's been missing all day. Her mum Linda and dad Tony speak to everyone who knows her, friends and family.
I think on the Monday evening, Tony had gone round to his sister's house to see whether they'd heard from her, and he couldn't get any answer, but through the window there was a lot of camera equipment out, which he thought was quite a bizarre thing to be doing, and everyone was out looking, but he wasn't. It didn't sit right with him, didn't sit right with Tone at all. When Tone came home, Tone was quite agitated about it. I don't think at that time I really thought that much of it. I think my focus was mainly on where is she, is she coming home. I think I took on board what he said, but I don't think at that moment it was that relevant to me. I was just more concerned about where she was, why hadn't she come home.
As night falls, Danielle is still missing.
It was the following morning when I first became aware of Danielle's disappearance. There was a call in from the police, I believe, and the then editor and his head of news desk were clearly concerned about what might be developing.
The police, I think, came back that day. We had the sniffer dogs came and walked all around the estate, in which they established the route she'd taken. They could tell that she'd walked so far and retraced her steps. They were able to ascertain that. And I just think I was in total shock that a girl that never really would put a foot out of line suddenly went to school yesterday and hadn't come home. I don't think at that point I thought anything sinister had happened. I just hoped, I think, that she would come home.
The first 3 days, inquiries were made with school friends, searches were made of her home address, but no particular relevant evidence was found at that time. Eventually, the search expanded, and every house in East Tilbury, the village where she lived, was visited by the police, and the occupants of every address were spoken to and asked to check their sheds and outbuildings just to make sure that Danielle was not hiding there. But as hours went by, it became clear to Grays Police that something awful may have happened. And that's when it was referred to headquarters, to the Major Investigation Section.
Danielle Jones has been missing for 3 days. The investigation steps up a gear.
When they turned up, it was quite a shock really, because although we'd had police in and out since the Monday, this sort of took a whole different level.
DC Ed Mayo is the family liaison officer assigned to the Jones family.
When you deploy to a family, you don't know what the family setup is, the dynamics of the family. You don't know what the relationship between mum and dad is, are they still together, or what siblings there are. And if we were going to find out exactly what Danielle was like, what her routine was, where she'd likely to go, who did she associate with, that's all going to come from within the family.
We had several police come in. I was taken upstairs and asked to give statements. Tone was sat down here, asked to give statements. It was just a completely different level.
I needed alibi statements from both Tony and Linda, try and exclude them as being suspects. We want to search her room and the whole house. So actually, very quickly, I've got to build up a report and start getting the things that we want.
What we're trying to achieve is all the information we can about Danielle and about the family.
She had quite a close-knit group of friends, girlfriends, who actually they did lots together, shopping, typical teenage girls. But Danielle was quite naive in the way she was. She was a really nice kid.
They raised concerns about her relationship with her uncle, which until that time I don't think they had been unduly concerned about. But now that she was missing, I think they began to become very worried about what that relationship was all about.
Danielle's uncle is in the frame.
I think Tony's suspicions because he knew Campbell had a bit of a past.
And details of that past come to light.
He would encourage these young girls back to his home address, where he would take inappropriate photographs of them.
I don't think I could conceive that her uncle would hurt her.
Danielle Jones has been missing for 3 days. There's suspicion that her uncle, Stuart Campbell, is involved.
I think Tony's suspicions because he knew Campbell had a bit of a past. He had some sort of glamour photography business, although he was actually a builder by trade.
The family may have suspicions. The police need to find evidence.
Initial inquiries by Grays Police and then confirmed by the major investigation team centred around a blue van, the driver of which was seen speaking to a girl fitting Danielle's description. There was also sightings of an altercation between somebody matching Danielle's description with a man in a blue van.
Danielle's uncle, Stuart Campbell, owns a blue van.
Once the information regarding the blue van came to my notice, it confirmed my worst fears that she had been abducted.
I recall pretty quickly a press conference being set up. A huge story was unfolding. There was national press. It was clear that there was some real concern around what happened to Danielle.
In a case where a child goes missing, the police rely heavily on the media to put out appeals for witnesses, appeals for information.
Over the years you see parents giving press conferences of children that have gone missing and your heart goes out to them, and then suddenly to be the mother and father having to actually do that yourself is unreal. The fact that you've got to actually beg your child to come home, or beg whoever is stopping your child coming home to let them come home, it's just a completely unreal situation. It's horrendous, absolutely horrendous thing to have to go through. It's like being thrown into the lion's den, to be honest. I met Stuart pretty much within weeks of meeting Tony, really, because he was going out with Tony's sister. He was a bit of a charmer, very full of himself, but there was always something with Tone and him that Tone wasn't 100% with him, but he still couldn't have told you he didn't like him, because he did. Stuart's relationship with the children when they were small was great, used to play with them, treat all of them exactly the same. And I would say not until year 18 months before Danielle went missing that he would take more of an interest in Danielle. But I think the boys were growing up then and weren't so interested in playing silly games with their uncle.
Initially,
he didn't pay much attention to her. But once she became a teenager, he seemed to become very friendly with her, very interested in what she was doing.
It became apparent that her uncle, Stuart Campbell, was quite an influence in her life at that time. The more you delved into Tony and Linda's relationship with Danielle, it was almost seemed, from an outsider's point of view, that he had been there driving a wedge in between Danielle and Linda, and he had put himself in that position as a comforting uncle, but his intentions were more than comforting.
Got on fine with him. We just fitted in all together as a family. No reason to distrust him in any way, really.
It certainly became clear from her friends that they thought that Danielle was having, what, in their words, an inappropriate relationship with Stuart Campbell. Friends would say initially she was not unhappy with this attention. As the time drew on, clearly she became more and more frustrated and anxious about the attention that Stuart Campbell was giving her.
We know that actually he spent a lot of time coming to the house and speaking to Danielle quietly to one side. I think they've been to the pictures together. I think one of her friends said that they thought she saw her holding hands. So it became apparent that perhaps actually the relationship between an uncle and his niece wasn't perhaps as it should be.
As Campbell became more and more of interest, inquiries were made into his background, and it was ascertained that he'd had a previous conviction about a year earlier for abducting a 14-year-old girl, where he'd received a suspended prison sentence.
So clearly our concerns about him as a predator were there and were absolutely real. And when we started to look at his background, we identified some 30 victims over a 20-year period. And there'd been a very common modus operandi with Campbell. He posed as a glamour photographer, and he would approach young girls in the Grays area, and particularly when they were around 13, 14, starting to become young women. And basically, he was so confident in his own ability that he would encourage these young girls back to his home address, where he would take inappropriate photographs of them on the premise that they were going to be model photographs.
I don't think I really knew that he did photography particularly, but we became to know that a young girl had been to the police because she said he wanted to take photos of her and wouldn't let her out of the house. We didn't know all the details of that at the time. Apparently he was taken in for questioning but let off, and we were told, it was all a big misunderstanding. The girl had a bit of a hissy fit. She wanted him to take some photos. It was all very much brushed off under the carpet. We thought nothing of it, but we didn't. It was just, it's a big misunderstanding.
Campbell had actually convinced them post-trial that he was an innocent victim and he wasn't guilty of this offence. So they knew of the background of it, but they'd dismissed it, obviously up until the time Danielle went missing.
Campbell was a concern to the investigation. He was somebody, a person of interest, who we needed to either implicate or eliminate.
They had looked into him and found out this history he'd got, and I don't think that from any point there was ever any other suspect.
As you can imagine, in a week now since Danielle has gone missing, the community concern is really heightened. We were approaching summer holidays and the community were very concerned about a potential predator at loose and young people. That the world's media really were on our case. So there was a real level of intensity around that. And of course, in the background, your ultimate aim is to try and find Danielle safely and return her to her home.
We conducted surveillance on him on that Friday, the 22nd of June, to try and ascertain where Danielle was.
We believe that he may be involved in her abduction, and it would have been very easy to arrest him there and then, but there was some concern and hope that Danielle was still alive.
The few hours of sleep you managed to have in all this time, which it was few and far between, you'd wake up and for that split second it wasn't there, and then it's like stabs you in the stomach that, oh my God, Danielle's not home, we don't know where she is, we don't know what's happened. It's an absolutely awful feeling. It is like you're a bit like a zombie. You're just not living in any sort of real world. You're still trying to sort the boys out, get them to school, trying to be normal, but you're just living in a complete daze.
He was acting in a very strange way, and certainly not the way that a concerned uncle would naturally be. He seemed to be spending time driving to car parks, taking photographs of silver cars which matched the description of his own Nissan Primera, and in some bizarre way appeared to be sort of building an alibi in for himself.
Following that surveillance, which lasted several hours, he was then arrested.
Stuart Campbell was arrested around about midnight, and he was interviewed quite intensely.
They were worried about your relationship with Danielle. Tell me what it was about her, Stuart. Why you wanted to be with her.
No comment.
So his initial alibi for his movements on the 18th of June was that he'd travelled to a local DIY store at Rayleigh, and then he had returned home straight away before working at his neighbour to do some decking work later on that morning. But his decision to go no comment, I think, concreted or cemented in our mind that he was a primary suspect.
I don't think I thought she was dead, because I don't think I could conceive that her uncle would hurt her. I think probably at that point I thought, well, he's got her somewhere, why would he hurt her?
There was certainly an element of Tony and Linda now having a backward look at the intensity in which Stuart Campbell had been with Danielle at their home address, and certain things I think were dropping into place that they now had real concerns about.
There was insufficient evidence to charge him, so he was released on bail.
The police dig deeper for more evidence. Everything is checked and checked again.
When they searched her bedroom, Danielle's bedroom, in a pencil case there were 2 notes which said "Hello Princess," and that was a nickname that Campbell had given to Danielle. It's believed that actually Campbell put those in her room while she was away on a school field trip, because Campbell previously had done some work around Tony and Linda's house and fitted a new back door. Although we never found the keys, it believed that actually he had a key to that house, and that it gave him easy access when Tony and Linda weren't there.
Simultaneous searches are carried out at Stuart Campbell's family home.
A team conducted a thorough search of Campbell's house, including searching his loft. And in that loft, a bag was discovered containing a number of significant articles.
In the bag was found a pair of white hold-up stockings, and on one leg of the stockings we found a small item of blood, and when that was subject to further examination there was a mixed DNA profile of Danielle and Stuart Campbell in that stain.
That was very hard to explain to Tony and Linda, that actually there was a pair of stockings in a bag that effectively had some sort of sexual nature to it, and Danielle's DNA was on those stockings. It was very hard. I think it was hard for Tony. He felt helpless and hopeless that he couldn't do anything, and that it's terrible, but also it's very good evidence to convict him.
All the indicators are pointing police to one conclusion.
I believe Campbell had an obsession regarding Danielle, one that developed since she became a teenager. And the nature of that relationship is still unknown to us. It was certainly inappropriate and probably unlawful.
We honestly believe that Danielle's been murdered. Campbell was our main suspect. We believed it. We just needed to prove it.
Despite the police believing Danielle's been murdered, there's compelling evidence to suggest otherwise.
We had 830 different sightings of Danielle throughout England.
And there's news.
The first contact we had from Danielle wasn't to us, it was to her uncle.
"15-year-old Danielle Jones has disappeared. Police believe that she's been murdered by her uncle, Stuart Campbell."
At that time, from June the 23rd, we were satisfied that he was the person responsible for Danielle's disappearance. But that couldn't be relayed to the public because we could only name an offender once they're charged.
There's some real momentum now with this story, and it's clear now that this is no longer a missing persons investigation, and the severity was clear.
At this point, they started to do search areas. They did on the Saturday, I believe it was, a public search down by the Thames, which is literally down the road to us.
There was almost like an eerie silence and seriousness within the people involved, and their determination to try and help the family and come up with something in the search. I remember being taken aback by how many people had actually got involved in something like that at such short notice. There was always that anticipation that something at any moment could be turned up that could be a significant piece of evidence or something even worse, and there was always that heightened feel about any of those searches.
The only person that wasn't involved was her uncle. Surely he would be the first one to be involved when he had a close relationship with her, thought a lot of her, and yet he was probably the only person I could think of that never got involved in searching for her.
Linda's hopes were always that Danielle was going to just walk straight back in. Linda realised actually when we started searching deep water and we were looking in disused buildings, and it was really ramping up. We believe the hypothesis is Danielle's been murdered. We're looking for a body, and this is why we are searching in these places.
They were searching in the local area with police that were searching underwater, and I think that tipped me over the edge a little bit. I think part of me knew, but a bigger part of me didn't want to know, didn't want to accept that is what the outcome was going to be. And I think the more the investigation went on and the more we were told, I knew she was dead, but you still can't quite get that slither of hope that, well, they're wrong, she's going to walk through the door. The first contact we had from Danielle wasn't to us, it was to her uncle.
He was very keen to show them a text message that he'd received on his phone from Danielle, which said, "Hi Stu, what you up to? I'm in so much trouble."
Just hearing that someone had had contact, for me, was a bit of a relief. She's alive. Everything will be all right. It's going to be ups and downs until that point, but she's alive. And you cling to that hope for the amount of time until you hear anything different. I clung to the hope that, well, someone's heard from her, so everything's fine. There's obviously an issue, but she's fine. And I think that's all I cared about at that moment.
Linda obviously is really upset at this point. She can't understand why Danielle hasn't contacted her, why she hasn't come home, and why she would contact Stuart Campbell.
As days went on, and as they became aware of Stuart Campbell's background, they then realised that this wasn't such positive news. It was in fact quite sinister news. Once the investigation's progressing, we sought the assistance of a range of experts.
The introduction of a telephone expert into the inquiry really cemented our view that Stuart Campbell had lied about his alibi on the 18th of June.
Campbell had said that at the time Danielle went missing, on her way to school that morning, that he was at a do-it-yourself shop in Rayleigh, and that having been to that shop, first of all, he didn't buy anything, which was suspicious, but on returning back to the Grays area, he was delayed, and that he telephoned his wife. When cell site analysis was carried out regarding that phone call that he made to his wife, it was proved that his telephone was actually not in Rayleigh, but that the call was made from the East Tilbury, Corringham area. That was strong evidence that Campbell was lying. We also employed the services of a forensic linguist to actually analyse the language she was using in those text messages and compared it to language that she'd used in other text messages which we knew that she was sent, and they were very, very different.
In one of the messages that Stuart Campbell had sent to his own phone purporting to be Danielle, he'd used the word "what," spelt W-O-T, Danielle never spelt the word what, she spelt it in the normal spelling.
The fact that the cell site analysis proved that his phone and Danielle's phone were so close together during the first couple of days that she was missing was significant evidence. As inquiries developed regarding Stuart Campbell, once we learnt more about his background, once we identified his predilection for girls of Danielle's age, it really only confirmed my fears that she'd been murdered. Inquiries continued regarding him, and other offences that he had committed came to light. Inquiries regarding his computer identified that he'd been taking photos of other young women, some without their consent. So on the 17th of August, when he answered his bail, he was rearrested and charged with those offences.
In the background, police are building their case against Campbell for Danielle's murder.
We had so much circumstantial evidence that the case to us appeared to be very strong, notwithstanding Danielle hadn't been located. We worked with the Crown Prosecution Service, and between November, when he was charged with murder and kidnap, there was then almost a year before the trial.
I can't believe that someone who had watched Danielle grow up from a baby could end up doing something like this. It's just, you always assume that children that go missing or anyone that gets murdered is something quite a random thing to happen from someone you don't know. I don't think in a million years I would have ever dreamt someone in my own family would have done this.
Linda and Tony very angry that they had allowed Campbell into their home, allowed that relationship to develop and not noticed it. People did say, how did you not know? How did you not know that that was going on? And it was just, he was very clever, manipulative. He knew what he was doing when he was speaking with Danielle, when he was like pushing that barrier between her and Linda. And it's just difficult because you don't see it. Unless you're aware of it, you just don't see it. He was very clever. So I think that was where the anger stemmed from, that actually perhaps they could have stopped it previously, but didn't because they didn't know.
There was shock in the community that an uncle of Danielle had been charged with her murder and kidnap. At the same time, I think there was some relief that there wasn't still someone at large who may be responsible for abducting young girls.
Stuart Campbell has been charged with kidnap and murder, but sightings of Danielle are still being reported to police.
As a result of all the appeals that Essex Police made, we had 830 different sightings, alleged sightings of Danielle throughout England, United Kingdom, Europe and some other places in the world.
The sightings, there were hundreds and hundreds of sightings that went on for months and months. I think the sightings did initially give me hope that, oh yeah, she's been seen, but then as I sort of would be out or myself see girls from the back and even myself think it was her, I think the reality that any of them probably were her was fading.
This provided a massive logistical problem for Essex Police, particularly after Campbell had been charged with murder, because every sighting had to be investigated and eliminated, because if there was the slightest chance that Danielle was alive and that particular sighting had not been properly investigated, it would have been easy for the defence to raise that during the trial and leave some shadow of doubt that Danielle was still alive and therefore the case of murder could not be proved.
Danielle's parents face a horrific task.
How do you tell your sons that not only is your sister dead, but your uncle's responsible? How do you word that?
"43-year-old Stuart Campbell has been charged with the kidnap and murder of his 15-year-old niece, Danielle. Her brothers need to be told what's happened."
When we had to tell the boys that uncle had been arrested and was responsible for Danielle's disappearance, it was a really difficult time.
Mitchell was possibly just turned 11 by then, Ryan was 13. How do you tell your sons that not only is your sister dead, but your uncle's responsible? How do you word that? So our FLOs came round and we asked them to be here while we told them. And we told them exactly that. Your sister's been murdered and this is who's responsible. I don't think Mitchell really comprehended it. Ryan did, I think, and they just disappeared upstairs, and our FLO went up and spoke to them and they were fine. But I never ever thought I'd be in a situation, A, to tell my sons that their sister was dead, and to tell them that a family member was responsible. That was probably the point where I thought, well, I've got to accept this is what's happened and I'm never going to see her again.
Nearly 1 year after Danielle went missing, Stuart Campbell goes on trial for her kidnap and murder.
By the time we came to trial in November, we had obtained huge amounts of circumstantial evidence. On this occasion, we didn't have a body, we didn't have a deposition site, but we did have a scene of crime in so much that we had the searches at Stuart Campbell's home address. Because of the absence of a body, we had to prove negative, so we had to show that as a 15-year-old girl, Danielle wasn't worldly wise. She was afraid of the dark. She wasn't the sort of person that would simply have run away. And we had to prove things like the fact that she hadn't taken a mobile phone charger, she hadn't taken a change of clothing, and she had no money. All the things you'd expect a young person to do if they were planning on running away from the family home.
I went every day, Tone went, and I would say 90% of the time, but he still had to earn a living. So, I mean, I went every day. And there were things I heard that I really didn't want to hear, but you're almost compelled that you need to hear it. It wasn't pleasant, a lot of it, but I think come that point, there wasn't a lot else that could upset us, to be honest.
On the first day I went up to report on the trial, I was immediately drawn over to where Campbell was sitting in the box, and I just remember him seeming, it definitely had an air of confidence about him, that he seemed unfazed with what was going on around him, what the prosecution was saying, what he was being accused of. Almost bordering on arrogance, I would have said.
I don't think I looked at him at all. I couldn't. Just the fact that it was in there was quite hard.
During trial, I would see Linda in the public gallery, and it sticks in my mind of just how upset and traumatised Linda seemed, and you couldn't help but feel for her. It was a very emotional time.
Campbell was very quiet while sat in the dock, and at all times he had to have a connection with his defending team, say passing notes. If he was not happy with one of the witnesses, it quickly would be scribbled notes through. Clearly he wanted to have a certain amount of control over what was being asked of each witness.
We would never have got through it without the support we had from family and friends, but I think the support of our FLOs was outstanding. I really don't think we would have got through it without them. It was a long trial, harrowing.
The 11-week trial finally draws to a close.
Following the jury's deliberations, they returned a verdict, a majority verdict, of guilty of murder and guilty of kidnapping Danielle.
I can't think of a situation that is worse than being someone that you've trusted with your children, let into your home, be part of your life, do something so horrendous to someone that supposedly they thought the world of. How? I can't comprehend that even now. I think life should be life, but he got a sentence of 23 years.
I was elated, most of all for Tony and Linda, but also for the investigation team and everybody on Essex Police who had worked so hard for almost 2 years.
I live with guilt quite a lot because you protect your children. You like to think you'd protect your children, and obviously I feel that I let her down. I didn't protect her. Had I known possibly what she was going through, I could have done something about it, but I didn't, and I feel guilty that I wasn't aware of that, and I just feel guilty that I wasn't able to protect her, which was, as a mum, is your job, and I didn't fulfil that job for her. He's still alive and still will come out with a life at the end of it, and she never will. But to say where her body is, got to admit he's done it, and I don't know that he ever will. But we still haven't got our daughter back, and that is torture.
After the trial, I hosted a press conference with the media, and during that time I made the declaration that Essex Police would never stop searching for Danielle's body.
Until Danielle's body is found, this case remains open. In May 2017, 16 years after she disappeared, police get a tip-off about a possible burial site.
Just last year there was some information come to light, and a number of garages were demolished and dug up in the hope that actually this is going to be where we expect to find Danielle. So obviously I was with the family again, going down, keeping them informed of what was happening.
At the time, I remember being quite optimistic that Danielle's body was going to be found and there would be some closure for Linda, Tony and the rest of Danielle's family.
Whilst we're all hopeful this would produce some evidence, I wasn't confident, knowing how intense the searching had been during a 12-month period of the investigation.
So after all of these efforts by police, there's no body found, and I couldn't help but think just how horrendous that must have been for Tony, Linda, and their other children, that Danielle wasn't found and they weren't able to lay her to rest in the way they'd want to.
Linda's desperate to get Danielle back now. Even now, she's desperate, as all she wants is Danielle back to actually bring her home.
To get 100% justice, which is getting her back. Without that, we've been robbed of some of the justice that she deserves, and she does deserve that. She deserves to be brought home and put somewhere nice, not just discarded, which is what she has been. The only thing I would say to him, if he ever was in a position to listen, is to do the right thing. Just once do the right thing and give her back to us.